So, welcome to the Buddhist Society's class, wherever it's being held. I've no idea whether I see lots of familiar names from our previous meetings. Maybe there are some folks who are new to the class, or new to Buddhism, or new to meditation. So, a word or two about what, with a bit of luck, may happen this evening. I'll try to give a bit of guidance initially, and then we'll sit. Probably after about 25 minutes or so, take a little break, and then sit again through to whenever it ends, for about an hour from now, I guess. And then we can have an opportunity for questions, discussion, whatever. And in the meantime, we're all on mute, I think. So if you've got any questions at all, or comments as you go along, I mean, do feel free to put them in the chat box. I'm just making sure that there we go. Chat. Yes. I can pick up chats, and behind the scenes, there's a magician called Wongdu, who's handling the IT, and if anything that comes his way that I might miss, he'll put in the chat box. So feel free to make any comments at all, or ask any questions as we go along, and I'll try and deal with it if I can. So here we are. And whether we've been coming regularly for months, or this is the first time we've ever been to a meditation class at all, anywhere, let alone the Buddhist Society, the most useful thing to bring along is an open mind, actually. An attitude of curiosity, just a gentle curiosity, non-judgmental. What's it like? That sort of attitude? That's a very, very good attitude to bring. It's like, I guess some of us have been doing this for a long, long time, but we've never done it, at 6:30 today. We've never done that. So it's kind of open-minded curiosity. We may have expectations of the class or meditation or whatever. Don't let that stand in the way of open-minded curiosity. So open-minded curiosity is the best thing we can all bring along. And we've all brought along a body of some sort. The body can support our practice. A lot of people make a big deal about posture, and in some traditions they do, like Zen tradition. I'm much, it's like I recognize that posture can certainly help, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And a helpful posture is one which is alert, because mindfulness is all about, it's a knowing, it's a noticing practice. So however we're sitting or lying or standing or whatever we are, could be standing up actually, an alert posture, whatever that means to you, an alert posture, but also a relaxed posture, kind of a comfortable, it's okay sort of posture. It may not be great, And meditation is not, it's not about relaxation as such. That might be a nice byproduct, as it were, of a period of meditation. Just pretty relaxed. But just a comfortable, alert posture. Comfortable, alert posture. And on the topic of the body, just remind ourselves that in the Buddha's teachings on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that's just the name of his main teaching. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. And there's masses and masses of practice exercises and whatnot in there. Right now, it's just a question of bringing attention to how the body feels, sensations in the body. There again, not in a judgmental way particularly, although, when you catch your mind sort of saying, oh, that ache is not so good, that's quite understandable. But just be aware of ordinary feelings in the body. And this is not judgmental at all. It's not an opinion. It's not an opinion. Meditation, mindfulness meditation is very direct. It's very simple. It's not sort of analytical. It's just the body's like the way it is. It's like the sort of general strap line, thanks to Ajahn Subhaddo, that I use for this class. If you go online, look at it, it's like mindfulness is like this. That's what mindfulness is, appreciation of, it's just like this. So how's the body? Just like this. And we're all sitting down here on something or standing. Are you aware of the feeling of sitting? Any pressure points? Because we're all sitting on something. You notice pressure there. Sitting on the floor, lots of contact. You know the feelings there. We're all breathing, I hope. So just aware of the feeling of breathing. I mean, in the belly. Just feel the belly up and down. Breathe in and out. Any sensations in the hips at all? Park the hand somewhere, out of the way. They're very sensitive. So even if we put them, they're not waving around and grabbing things. They're warm, they're sticky, they're touching. Just notice that, simple things like that. Sensations in the trunk of the body. You can feel the touch of our clothing on the body, perhaps. Feelings in the back, sensations in the back. And a sense, a feeling in the back. You might want to adjust the posture, perhaps. An alert posture, but relaxed posture. Okay. It's quite okay to spend a moment or two at the period of beginning of a bit of meditation just to wriggle around, get things set up in an alert but relaxed way. It's like anything else, really. And to have done a bit of meditation, we don't quite know how to configure things, get it sorted out. No, it's okay. Wriggle around a bit, get comfortable, and just be aware of smaller sensations, the touch of the breath on the nostrils, for example, and saliva in the mouth, tongue touching the teeth. Eyes, what would you like to do? Close the eyes completely? That would be my preference for me. But I've got enough distractions. If I keep my eyes open, I'll be looking at the screen the whole time if I keep my eyes open tonight. And you're all lovely people, but I was trying to do a bit of meditation. So you turn the attention inwards, maybe by closing the eyes or half closing the eyes, and notice the sensations around the eyes when you close the eyes. And just notice more, refined feelings, nothing special sensations around the scalp, the head, probably nothing there. That's interesting, isn't it? When there's no sensation, being aware of no sensation. Come back to that sort of thing later on. You can check out the shoulders. Any tension? If so, just breathe out, relax. Down through the body, the arms, sensations in the arms. Again, clothing touching, I guess, or the warmth or cold of the room that we're in. Down to the feeling of sitting again. That's that weight of the body, sitting bones, sitting on something. And the legs, the knees. And the feet on the floor. There you go, we're just aware of the body. Sensations of the body. And they'll come and go during a period of meditation. You can have feel the body pretty comfortable now, but no, we're not going to sit for 2 hours, I promise you. But if we sat for 2 hours, we probably wouldn't feel so comfortable. There's no perfect posture, but it's a good enough posture. It's a good enough posture, isn't it? They don't have to have a special body to meditate, which is convenient, really. And there again, avoid, if you can, these sort of automatic judgmental responses. But you know, I'm too old, I'm too young, right? I haven't quite got things set up properly. I notice things like, you know, dullness or heaviness in the body. It's not great, but it's entirely workable with. You can work with dullness or heaviness. Or not getting the light right. You know, I think we're probably all indoors here, but I remember sometimes sitting at the Buddhist Society and the light would be kind of streaming in through the windows, quite big windows in the lecture room of the Buddhist Society. You sit there with and you just notice, you know, the mind wanting to move, but it's just a feeling of light on the body, heat, cold. It's like this. Remember that little phrase, it's like this. And we're just exploring what it's like. It's like this. It feels a particular way, and often we react in a particular way as well. That's the way it is. That's the way we're set up. And that's something for us to study, actually, to learn about. How's the mood this evening? Upbeat, downbeat? Pretty good? Not so great? Dull, depressed, happy as Larry? Let's be aware of that. It's just other conditions. What's it like? It's like this. This is what it feels like. And I find that, you know, that sort of what's it feel like, quite a good attitude with mental states, mental conditions. When you say, what's it feel like? It's like this, sort of backing off from the heavy duty stuff that's going on in the mind. And, oh, it feels like this. And then these sort of preparatory steps, making sure we're coming on with the right attitude. Got the posture set up reasonably. We're aware of sensations in the body and the mind, general mood. And then it's often very helpful to have a meditation object, a little something terribly neutral, like the feeling of the breath, like around the nostrils or in the abdomen or anywhere else. Everybody's breathing, in breath, out breath. But there are lots of other meditation objects. Little word, a mantra, call it what you like. In the Thai forest tradition, often use the phrase or the word Buddha, Buddha. It's like Buddha, but it's an adjective. It just means awake, awake. Buddha, Buddha. I like may I be well, may others be well. These are just little stabilizers to bring the attention back from wherever it's wandered to the meditation object. And because a lot of our thinking is verbal, chattering away to ourselves here, it's quite nice to have something else to say to ourselves. Buddha, Buddha, peace, peace. They're meditation objects, or the sound of the silent mind, whatever that is. So just let's sit here for a few moments. Open-minded curiosity. There's this lovely line I heard somebody say. Oh, I don't know what it was. My class at the Buddhist Society. Just sit down for a bit and see what happens. And when you say sort of see what happens, we've got the eyes closed. What I guess we mean is what's coming into the mind? What's the mind up to? Because we experience our world in the mind, don't we? Sit down and just see what happens. I'd like to suggest a little tweak to our practice this evening. If we're used to travelling around London, I haven't done it for a bit, but if you use a tube in London, train comes into the station often, doors open, and there's a sign on the platform saying, mind the gap, and they mean, there's a gap between the train and the platform edge. Mind the gap. Be alert, take care. You don't want to fall in. Even worse, you don't want your phone to fall in. So the door's open, mind the gap. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid the dukkha, and of at the very least dropping your phone in between the train and the platform edge. Mind the gap. And that's a particular aspect of mindfulness, isn't it? Attentiveness. Using one aspect of mindfulness, which you just call paying attention in the usual sort of sense, to avoid trouble. Mind the gap. That sounds sensible. Mind the gap, back off, take care. And meditation. I want to suggest this evening we might, you don't have to do this, but you might notice gaps as we meditate. Just notice them. So, for example, if we use the breath as a meditation object, or even if we don't, everybody's breathing. So we can notice breathing in and breathing out. Basic, what they call anapanasati, mindfulness of the in-breath and the out-breath. Mind the gap. When we breathe in, there's a gap before we breathe out. There's a gap before we breathe in. So paying attention to endings there, As people don't control this. It's not saying you've got to control anything. But this is just a way of, if you like, fine-tuning our attention. In-breath, and out-breath begins and out-breath ends. There's a gap. Usually, as our breathing slows down, there's more of a gap. Supposing we're using a mantra like Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. I just notice that Buddho, gap, Buddho, gap, Buddho, gap, Buddho, gap. And you notice with all the sensations in the body, they come and they go, don't they? So you notice, supposing we've got, I don't know, a little itch, or we're aware of the heat of the room, and then the attention moves to some other sensation. There's a gap, isn't there? Sensations have a life of their own. Some sensations stick around sometimes longer than we like. But typically, feelings begin and end, and we notice they're ending. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. And then sounds. Like Buddho, Buddho, or a past. As we pay attention to the gaps, there's a gap in the breath before it turns from in to out or out to in. What's it like to be aware of, pick a part of the body, top of the head? There's no sensation there. Just notice that gap in the continuity of feelings or sensation in the body. If I wanted to, you could spend the whole evening being aware of different sensations all over the body, heat and pressure and movement. And be aware of no sensation. Feeling, no sensation. It's interesting, isn't it? Or when we're listening, the sound goes, and we're still listening. There's a gap. Pay attention to that. Notice that. And of course, thinking as well. And this is not like saying, oh, that thought's ended. Another one's going to come along soon because we've already got another thought working up there, haven't we? And just being aware of things like there's no sensations in your left fingernail right now, if that's true. If I stop talking for a moment, no sound, is there? Awareness of no sound. Be perfectly aware. When a thought stops, momentarily, perhaps before another one kicks in, before the autopilot gets to work, isn't there a little break that we can just notice? Just be aware of it without any commentary. It's not like, aren't I clever? I wasn't thinking for that split second. Being aware of it as we might be if there was a thought there. To notice these non-events, notice these gaps, notice these endings, and just notice all the stuff changes, doesn't it? You know, these beginnings and endings, everything, all the phenomena, all the stuff that comes into the mind, comes along, goes away, comes along, goes away. You know, one mood replaces another mood. Be thinking about what's going to happen in the next 15 minutes in the class. And start thinking about what happened the day before yesterday. All this stuff comes into the mind, goes away again. And then there are little gaps, momentary gaps, before one sound follows another, one feeling follows another, one thought follows another. But there are these gaps. And I'd just like us, in the next few minutes, to pay as much attention to the gaps as to the actual contents of what's going on in the mind. Contents come and go. Be aware of the going, of the gaps. Don't force it. Don't try and suppress. Just be the observer of an ending. So it's interesting to compare our attitude to the gaps. When we mind the gaps on the tube, mind the gap. The point about that is to avoid trouble. You've got to avoid the gap. Mind the gap, don't get into trouble. Be careful, avoid it. In meditation, there are gaps. We pay attention to them. We're mindful of the gaps. There's a gap between the out-breath and the in-breath, between this thought and that thought, between hearing the sound and the sound going away. And the attitude's more of, that's interesting. Isn't that interesting? Rather than, got to get away from it. So that's interesting, isn't it? What's it like? And the answer is, it's like this. It's just as we experience it. So the practice of mindfulness of the gap itself is just exploring the answer to the question of, what's it like? Well, when there's no thought, what's it like? When we're paying attention to sensations in the body and there's no sensation, what's it like? This is all, this attitude of curiosity that we bring to a period of meditation. What's it like? And when there's no sensation, when there's no sound, or when there's no thought, there's always something else, isn't there? Because we're aware of it. There's awareness of it. It's not like we don't know what happens when there's a gap between the thinking, or when there's a pause in the breath between an in-breath and an out-breath, or an out-breath and in. We know that. So it's not we're unconscious. There is conscious awareness. There is knowing. You can call it anything you like. There's awareness, there's consciousness, there's knowing. And that, of course, is always present. It's always there. That doesn't change. All the thinking and the sounds and the physical sensations and smells and tastes and all the rest of it come and go. That's their nature. They come and they go. But this ability to, which we all have, but it's not personal, it's just this ability to know, to be aware, to be consciously aware, that doesn't change. It's always there. And so, what's it like? It's like this. And it's difficult to describe, but we know it's pretty peaceful. It's not, ecstatically happy. That would be a condition that came into the mind, or it's not scary, unless we want to make it scary. But what we'd know fear, or we'd know happiness. So there's that awareness of it. So it's spacious, isn't it? It accommodates anything that conditions throw at it. So it's kind of not conditional on anything, really. It all comes into the knowing mind, that peaceful, spacious, permanent, empty mind. Empty mind. So Buddhism, particularly maybe in Mahayana Buddhism, they make a big deal about emptiness. Emptiness is everywhere. Well, the mind is potentially empty and anything can be put into it. So what we're looking at when we look at these little gaps between one breath and another breath, between this thought and that thought, what we're experiencing is the true nature of the mind, as opposed to the contents of the mind. We can put lots of, the contents of the mind are what we're what we're aware of. The awareness itself is always there, receiving whatever comes in and letting it go again. So it's kind of, the practice seems to me to be, rather than avoiding the gap, there's a gap, avoid it. That's like the gap between the train and the platform. So we don't, the practice is not one of avoiding these gaps in our conscious experience, but to get familiar with these gaps, to cultivate them and avoid dukkha that way. You know, so in you know, on the tube, we avoid problems by being mindfulness of the gap, mindful of gaps. Sure. In meditation, we avoid dukkha, by cultivating the gaps, actually, by cultivating the gaps, because we're getting more in tune with the true nature of the mind, and ability to be, an ability to experience conscious awareness, emptiness. So let's do a little more sitting. And I'll try and say even less than I said in the first session. And don't forget, the chat box is always open. Nobody's sent through anything yet, but if you've got the urge to send a question through or anything like that, or an observation, please feel free to do it. Otherwise, settle back, get comfy again, check out the body, how we're doing. How's the posture? Alert, relaxed, easy, stable. I always go through these routines. It's like just checking out sensations in the body. I've been sort of sitting here doing my thing, and I've moved around a bit, odd aches and pains and discomfort. Notice all of that. How's the mood? Hope the mind hasn't been too stirred up too much or anything like that. Okay. And then you pick up a meditation object. If we use a meditation object, remember the meditation object is just a skillful means. It's a very handy way of stabilizing the mind, isn't it? To bring the attention back to wherever the monkey mind wants to go. And that's quite natural. To just notice where it's gone and redirect the attention towards, you name it, the feeling of the breath, the in-breath, the out-breath, the mantra, whatever it is we use. And as I say, I'm just suggesting as part of our practice, all sorts of ways we can fine-tune this practice. By the way, I like consciously noting things sometimes. It gives me a bit of space, so when there's a noise that you might note hearing, when there's a feeling a bit painful, you notice feeling, and there's thoughts, you just note thinking, kind of label it, and then bring it, and that's just a way of kind of intercepting habitual patterns of monkey-mindedness, of automatic responses. And then this other practice, which I'd encourage, is just notice endings of things, of gaps, ending these gaps, and then getting to know this difference between the contents of the mind and the mind itself. All sorts of fun things we can do in a period of meditation. So next week is the last Thursday of the month, last Thursday of November. And on the last Thursday of every month, we're usually lucky enough to have Ajahn Barry, Subhaddo, with the class. But he can't make it. I think he's traveling. So the class will be going on, but without him. What he's kindly agreed to do, though, is then to teach the one after that, which I think is something like December the 1st. So in the run up to Christmas, I think there are just 3 classes before the society closes. Actually, I can look in my little diary here. So yeah, on the 1st, Ajahn Barry will be teaching the class. And then on the 8th, it'll either be Richard Bober or me. And then on the 15th, which is the last one before Christmas, it's Ajahn Barry again. So there. So next week there'll be a class. Maybe there'll be a guest teacher. Maybe it'll be me. Anyway, the class will be on. Now, I haven't got any questions. Nothing's come through in the chat box. Please keep them coming if you've got anything. And of course, everybody should be able to unmute if you would like to engage in a chat in the usual sense. I hope that's right. So please do unmute and ask a question if you'd like to do that. Anything about this evening's class or Buddhism, the Buddhist Society, anything you like. I'll try and help.
Hello, Colin.
Yes.
Hello. I got a comment, really. It's a bit of a question, but just the other day, I happened across meditating when they have these Tibetan bowls that go gong all the time. And I thought they were really good, but I just wondered what you thought of them because they really work as an object.
Yeah.
The sound.
Absolutely. I mean, my general advice is, if it helps, do it. I've never kind of used that myself. I've got a little, I don't know whether this is a Tibetan bowl. I know what you mean, where you can kind of just ring it. Is that sort of thing, or just?
Well, I was listening to something. It was the insect timer. It was insight timer.
Yes.
People will know that. And it was just, so I was just doing my thing and it was just pinging in the background.
No, if it helps, use it. And on these like Insight Timer or other meditation apps, you can choose the bell, you can choose the timer. All those are many different sorts, and some will work for you and some won't. So that's quite nice. But I mean, I've got something here. What I've got here is a little bowl. Well, it's not so little actually. Yeah, I could quite imagine that one could use that as a meditation object, that sound. And actually, it's quite interesting to, this is apropos minding the gap, as it were, because one can follow the sound until it stops, and then you're still listening. It's like, you can try this if you like. I'll give this a good whack, and then we'll sit back for a moment. Follow the sound. And there's still that listening, hearing, but from where I'm sitting, there's no sound. Something's come through in the So as I say, just experiment with any sort of meditation object you like. That's helpful. And if listening to a sound is an external sound is helpful, that's great. The other one, of course, is this internal sound of silence, which people might find useful. Some people might not know what on earth I'm talking about. But when the mind goes quite quiet and there's not too much external sound either, one can often detect an internal sound in the mind. And it's hard to describe. Maybe a high-pitched, gentle ringing sound. Somebody I know said it was like tinnitus, but maybe not. I mean, I think tinnitus comes in many different shades and volumes, but this is a ringing sound, the sound of silence, that many people can pick up, and that I find that very useful myself, to let the attention rest on it. So anything like that is very helpful. I've just got a couple of that we can come back to more chat on. I've got two chat messages come through. Here's the first one. Finding it helpful to mind the gaps. Thanks. It helped me to focus on my breath more. I think my mind was wandering a bit less. Okie dokie, that's good. That's good. And it's, it gives the mind a bit more to do, as it were. It gives a bit more focus. Yeah, that's, I know what you mean. And then focus on the breath. It's quite, but as I say, there are gaps in the breath as well. So you can just focus on this quality of everything kind of changing, yes. You ring the bell and you're hearing it. And then one's using the hearing faculty to detect there's nothing to listen to, there's nothing to hear. So anything like that is helpful. And then somebody has come through from Wongdu. Oh, right. Okay, this is a message. This is an admin message that's coming through from Wongdu. Can you please tell the class there's an in-person meditation class on this coming Saturday at the Buddhist Society. The class will be led by, John Bedding, a friend of mine. Very good. That's very good. So if you're in London, and even if you're not, but can get to London, so on Saturday, and I guess that'll be early afternoon on Saturday, John Bedding will be leading the class, and he's a good guy. Here's another one. Right. When you speak of the true nature of the mind, whose mind is it? The individual's mind? Or do we mean... Okay, this one is just... Okay, and then it's run into something else. Okay, right. Whose mind is it? Good question. So that's very interesting, isn't it? Because to answer that question requires another thought, requires me to put something into consciousness to respond to that question. So that this, we talk about the true nature of the mind. To me, that's this ability we all have to be consciously aware. If you want to call it consciousness, that's fine, rather than consciousness of. It's just awareness, conscious awareness, conscious awareness. Whose is it? It doesn't have any personal characteristics as far as I'm concerned. All the personal stuff, is it belonging to me? Begs the question of what's this me thing and all the rest of it, which one can sort of try and answer. But these are all projections in the mind. These are, if somebody wanted to know who I was, or if I wanted to know who I was, I'd have to think about it. And there'd be a history there. There'd be a narrative there, I did this, I did that. Or rather, if I go back some more, who am I? I'm this age. I'm retired now, but in my prime, I used to be something else. I got a wife. I live in a particular place. I've got these interests, one of which is Buddhism, believe it or not, and on and on and on. So this is the story of me, and I've just projected it into my mind. Yeah. And then when I stop yakking on about me, there's still conscious awareness there, which is impersonal. So one can put, if one wants to, anything into the mind, this awareness. So it's, that whose is it? It's mine, it's yours, right? It's John Bedding's, it's Wongdu's. As I say, it has no personal characteristics. Or rather, as I say, we can create personal characteristics of this thing in the mind. But it doesn't really have any. I mean, because it's all encompassing. It's all encompassing. If you want to think about the universe, that's something else we put into this mind. So it's a very spacious idea. In fact, this idea of spaciousness is something that Ajahn Subhaddo has sort of, I remember him talking about this. It's this business about when we go into a room, and everybody's in a room now, or you can go to the Buddhist Society on Saturday, go into a room. And the one thing we're not, unless it's very crowded, you're not sort of aware of just the spaciousness of the room. The room will encompass anything and everybody that goes into it. The furniture, in the Buddhist Society, there's this big lecture room, and there are Buddha images, and lots of books, and people come and sit there, and on and on and on. This is all the contents of the room. The room itself is spacious. I know it's got walls around about it, but then there's some more space outside. It's kind of London. So the mind is like that. The mind is like that. I think that's another thought. Right? The mind can encompass anything. In itself, it's empty. It's empty. You can talk about being empty-headed if you want to, but that is a bit that's got a bad reputation. It's derogatory. Or one can be a bit nervous about it. It's like, if there's no thinking, but there's still consciousness there. And anyway, you don't have to worry about that, because we're so programmed to think that in a while, your thinking kicks back in again. And one of the most interesting things is to experience no thinking. It's quite interesting. And then thinking kicks back, because we're creatures of habit. We're programmed to think. So it's quite interesting to sort of, yes, that's stuff in the mind, as it were. The thinking is in the mind. But what's the mind like? It's impersonal, it's empty, it's spacious. It can accommodate all of this stuff and more besides. But its essential qualities are empty. So Ajahn Subhaddo talks about, as I say, it's like the space, the actual space in the room. I'm looking around my room now and seeing curtains and bits and pieces and books and you on the screen and all the rest of it. Right? But that's all contained within space. I mean, the analogy that I use often a lot is like going to the movies. So I'm going to see a movie on Saturday night, I think, at the local cinema. And, I don't know what the story is. There's a plot, the story, there's colours, there's action, there may be music, there'll be dialogue. But I wouldn't see any of that if there wasn't a screen there, actually. The one thing we don't appreciate is the screen, which supports whatever is projected onto it. And the mind, I don't know, it's my mind, the mind will support anything that my programming projects onto it. It's another way of looking at it. And I think it seems to have, unlike my intellect or my memories or my emotion, it's like it makes sense to attach me to those things. Because in conventional sense, I'm built up of all these bits and pieces. My memories, my life story, there's all kind of this stuff. Yes, my plans, yes, my worries, yes. The things I really enjoy, yes. It all takes place in the mind. It's like, my mind? It's just the mind, isn't it? So it's a heck of a good question. The true nature of the mind. Whose mind is it? It's yours, it's ours. That's just the mind, isn't it? I hope that's a bit enigmatic. Okay, somebody else has sent something through. and Fran, seeing as the mind thinks all the time, and is obviously designed to think all the time, where's the benefit of non-thinking mind? Well, we don't have to think all the time. The first thing is, I mean, look, thinking is quite useful. I earned a living through sort of thinking, actually. I'm a retired academic, and it's like, I do a lot of thinking. Thinking is useful, and thinking is pleasant, and thinking can be painful. Okay, what's the benefit of not thinking? If you like, it's to break this conceit that we are, that's me, actually. Well, it is in a conventional sense, but if we're trying to get beyond the self, I think discovering not thinking is quite sort of handy. I remember I had a discussion once at the Buddhist Society, because I was like looking after the class at the Buddhist Society, and one of the lovely nuns from the Chinese temple just off Tottenham Court Road came along. And we were having some sort of discussion kind of about this. And I was sort of, I don't know how we got into this. And she said to me, only enlightened people, I don't know, it's like, you only don't think when you're enlightened. And actually, I happen to disagree with that. I mean, but it seems a good place to be, actually, if one has aspirations towards full and complete liberation from suffering. Simply because, seeing through this sense of self is a lot of what it's all about. And exploring the true nature of the mind, which is open and expansive and not personal, seems to be a good place to be. So it's like on the tube, you're mindful of the gap and you want to avoid the gap. In Buddhist practice, you're mindful of gaps, but it's almost as like, maybe you want to step into the gap. That's quite interesting, isn't it? We step into the gap. And please don't think that we think all the time. We don't think all the time. We don't think it obviously one thought leads to another thought, absolutely. But in meditation, the first step really is just to be aware of that. When people come to meditation for the first time, they say, I can't do it because I'm thinking all the time. And the person leading the class should not say, you should not think all the time. And it's just nonsense. Because we appear to be thinking all the time. Right? But that's just the way we're set up. That's, if you like, our ordinary nature. Our ordinary nature. But it's just not true that we think all the time. I mean, I'm prepared to bet that people here this evening, there have been momentary gaps when the mind's not thinking. I bet there have been. But we probably don't even appreciate that. Because not thinking is, if you like, it's colorless. Thinking is pretty exciting. Thinking is stimulating. Even unpleasant thinking is, wow, you can identify with that. But there are gaps, I promise you, but we don't think all the time. We think all the time, but we don't think all the time. But it's a very rapid, it's a very rapid process. And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying, see what's going on. Go to the movies and see what's going on and appreciate that behind all this drama, as it were, there's knowing, there's noticing. If we go to the movies, there's a screen there. If we sit meditation, there's another screen there, and it's called the mind. That's all. And it's like, it's not. It doesn't have personal qualities. It doesn't really have personal characteristics. So I'm floundering around trying to describe it. I mean, as I say, it's open, it's expansive. It can accommodate the universe. It can accommodate me and my thoughts and all that stuff. But it is not me. Wow. Any other questions or comments? It's very interesting, you see, because in parallel to this class, at the same time this class is going on, there's a Tibetan class, and it's held, I think it's hybrid. I think it's held in the Buddhist Society and on Zoom as well. And when you read the, you could look at the web, so go to the website, and you look at the piece which is says, you know, at Thursday at 6:30 there's a Tibetan meditation class, and Roy, who teaches the class, you know, he's put something up there about it's all about, you know, discovering, exploring the true nature of the mind. So this is Tibetan Buddhism, and you know, I don't think I've done much in the way of Tibetan Buddhist practice, but it's the same thing from a Theravada point of view. I mean, I hesitate to sort of, I mean, it would be a joke if I said I wasn't into Theravada Buddhism, but I mean, it's like the more you practice and the more you know about other Buddhist traditions, everybody's kind of saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing. But you know, the problem is one of, you know, of me and my story and all the rest of it. But behind all of that, there's something else. There's something else, which is not impermanent, which is not permanent. What am I trying to talk about? Which is not impermanent, which doesn't change. And that's this knowing quality, this ability to know, or this knowing. And I think all Buddhist traditions, I'm probably going to be told I'm wrong about this, but I think all Buddhist traditions, you know, have at their heart this aspect of the mind. There's the mind and the contents of the mind. And the contents of the mind are what makes up, you know, me and my story. But behind all of that, there's the mind, which is impersonal. It's the screen. And we project the movie onto it. Are there any other observations? And don't forget, because I've had it, the message come through twice, that if you're in London or you'd like to be in London on Saturday afternoon at the Buddhist Society, a good friend, John Bedding, will be leading the class. And I'd like to encourage him to teach this class at times as well, but he is even more technophobic than I am. So any other questions or comments? Thank you very much indeed for coming. Thank you, Wangdu, for looking after the party this evening. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Cole.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Colin.